Hey everybody. So in this video, we're going to talk about a lot of issues, a lot of recent issues in regards to Disneyland and Disney in general. I have my good friend on here again, Mr. VashSky, aka Dre. Dre, how are you doing, sir?
Doing pretty good. How about you?
I'm doing great. Thank you. Thank you for
Awesome.
coming on again. I appreciate it. I always love to hear your insight.
You know what? It's been really fun. It's been really fun. We get to discuss about a lot of topics that maybe people aren't discussing, or maybe give some more nuance and some kind of deeper level discussion. So I really like it.
Perfect. Well, thank you, sir. Let's go ahead. The first topic of today is Disneyland officially announced it's going to reopen after the whole COVID-19 thing on its birthday, July 17th. What are your thoughts about this?
I was ecstatic. First of all, to get Disneyland back at all, we do remember some of those conversations. Well, I don't know if it's going to be opening in 18 months or whatever. I'm like, that's not going to happen.
Right.
That is not going to happen if you're thinking that. But it was kind of a real worry. Like, is it going to open in the summer? Is it going to open in the fall? Is it going to, and all those kind of conversations, evolved over time, and kind of all these things bounced around. To finally hear an opening day at all is just fantastic. It's absolutely great. I'm absolutely ecstatic about it. To do it on July 17th, it's just perfect. I mean, just absolutely perfect. And I think the company knows this. And when you go back there on July 17th, if anybody in the audience is watching that it is going to go back there, I think you might see the kind of the kind of company blitz. And what I mean by that is you might have like a Bob Iger or a Bob Chapek or a Josh Giamaro attending that opening, because it's in Burbank. You can have those executives come out there and have it be this kind of soft rebirth of the company, saying, we're back, we're ready to invite our guests, we're ready for a not a return to absolute normal, but a return to the company firing on all cylinders. I think it's going to be great. I think it's going to be fantastic.
Yeah, I completely agree with you, and I think it's time. I absolutely think it's time. There are a lot of fans. I don't know if you've seen it. There's a petition out there now to get them to reconsider their opening. It's too soon, and I'm going to get your thoughts on that. My feeling overall in regards to it being too soon is, look, the lockdowns made sense when we first, in March, right? When we were first learning about coronavirus, and we didn't know a whole lot about it. So the most logical thing to do is, shut down, lock down, have everyone inside until we learn more, right? How to fight this thing.
Yeah.
It's June, and it's going to be July when Disneyland finally opens. We know enough about how the virus spreads, the risk factors, the different risk groups, who's at higher risk than other groups. We know enough about it now where we can open up, right? And we can adapt. We have to adapt. And endless lockdowns are, in my opinion, are just not the answer. It's not feasible. And I don't know what people that are petitioning really want. I mean, so should we just keep it shut down until the vaccine? Because even when you get a vaccine, you're still going to have problems. I mean, 60,000 people a year die from the flu. We have a vaccine for that. So what's the end game with these shutdowns? So I think it's fine. I think opening in July, it's a month from now anyway. I think by then the situation is going to be greatly improved by then. It's improved today from a month ago. And I think it's the right time to do it. But what are your thoughts on that? People that are kind of pushing back on this opening.
Well, the way I would kind of respond to that is very much some of the arguments that you laid out. The whole point about lockdown or mitigation was to get a handle on this virus before it overwhelmed the healthcare system. We have not seen that in Orange County, and even with full mitigation, I was just going over the Orange County numbers, and even with full mitigation, it still went up. Still went up slowly. Even with full mitigation, with full lockdown, it has not. You haven't seen that precipitous drop off that we would expect from placing in those measures. So I think the dream of full compliance with lockdown, even, if you were to somehow tackle the virus, you have crazy amounts of unintended consequences going throughout these entire communities, the economy, and all that kind of stuff. You're just not going to be able to get a handle on it like you would want. So I think with what you were saying and what we discussed in some of the last conversations, can we adapt our procedures? Can we implement policies that take the qualities of this virus into account? We know now that we didn't know before. Hey, sunlight, pretty detrimental to this thing. Okay, well, that means that outdoor venues, that might be that that may mitigate this thing from spreading, and a lot more than we even thought previously. The healthcare system has been very much strengthened. We have all these things that we're kind of doing. So, okay, now let's start to open with the qualities of this virus known and with the data supporting it. I think if you were to get a super huge spike, then maybe you might have companies, corporations reconsidering it, but that's a choice that they can make. And that's not something that, the government's going to strip that right for you to make. So, I would say that. I would also say, look, you're going to have a lot of people, cast members specifically, who are going to want to get back to work, or are going to want to provide, and are going to want to provide that magic for the guests. You're going to have a lot of guests that are like, hey, you know what? I can take it upon myself to be safe. I can be safe for myself and towards other people. I can take that into my hands. They're putting in just all kinds of measures to mitigate it as much as possible. You're going to see a reduction in quality. A reduction in attendance, and that's going to help out a lot. These things of safety and economy or prosperity don't have to be diametrically opposed, or completely exclusive. They can work together, and I think it's incumbent on Disney to provide that for not only its guests but its cast members. On the flip side, though, if you go around the resort area around Disneyland and nothing's open, there is no traffic.
Right.
McDonald's closed. This is one of the most popular McDonald's in the world, and it is not operational because there is no traffic in that area. A lot of those businesses, those hotels, a lot of them are chains, a lot of them are part of corporations, but a lot of them are mom and pop. A lot of them are kind of self-owned. Those have a pretty good, there's a pretty good chance that they won't open if this goes on any further than it really absolutely has to.
Yeah.
So you kind of have to take all of that into account. I guess to say, to respond to the petitioners, yes. If you're in a pandemic, opening up a theme park, just on its face isn't conducive to that, right? It's, maybe something you don't do. But I would argue there is a way to do it. There is a way to do it safely, and it really is incumbent on Disney to find that, and I think they are.
Absolutely. No, I completely agree. And I've seen some concerns with cast members, on social media, saying that they're not ready personally to go back to work yet. They don't feel safe. And you know what? To those cast members, I completely respect that. And what I would suggest to those cast members, if you are a cast member and you're in that high risk group, you have a compromised immune system, you're older, maybe you're over 60 or 65 or whatever the case may be. Even if you're younger, but you just have, pre-existing conditions, if you're concerned about returning to work because of the virus, I think that, the best thing to do would be to really approach your management team and say, hey, this is my concern. These are my medical issues I have.
Right.
Is there any way you can keep me off the schedule just for like another few weeks after the opening? Or approach your management, because they're going to be willing to work with you.
I think they are, and I think it's in their union agreement that the company do as much as it can do to fulfill whatever needs that you have. And here's the thing: what if you had a role that was out in front of guests, and you request a role that's back of house, that's not in front of guests?
There you go.
That doesn't put you out there. There are solutions that can be obtained.
Right. Absolutely.
You know, and I would argue for those cast members, talk to your managers. If you don't, talk to your union reps and see what accommodations can be made.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So now, speaking of fan petitions and things like that, we're going to go into a subject matter that kind of sprouted up a few days ago in regards to Splash Mountain. Okay. Now, with the whole, there's a lot of unrest and a lot of racial tension right now in the country. And it came up that, you know, a lot of people feel that the theme of Splash Mountain is just not appropriate anymore in this day and age. I'll give my thoughts on this, but I wanted to ask you, what are your feelings on this petition, this kind of this movement to sort of re-theme Splash Mountain due to its connection to Song of the South, which is known as a pretty racial movie? What are your thoughts on that?
I would argue that Splash Mountain, as it's themed, it's not even called Song of the South. As it's themed to the animated aspects of Song of the South. I have fundamental problems with it. The first of being, you're wanting to completely retheme a multi-million-dollar attraction and completely remove that from anybody writing it again in that form, because it's based on the animated segment, not even the full movie. It doesn't feature any of the characters that made that original film, but you want to retheme it based on the animated segment on a film that's no longer in circulation, that is not easily found or accessible, because somebody might have a problem with it. I mean, I really have problems with our argument, just foundationally and fundamentally. It's based on Southern folklore from Joel Chandler Harris. These, you know, the characters of Brer Rabbit and Brer Fox and so forth. And you're wanting to have that removed based on the sensibilities of which I've heard none of. I've not seen anybody, at least in my experience, I haven't even heard of anybody expressing any type of viewpoints other than to say that it's an outstanding attraction. I've not heard anybody say that, oh, it's completely offensive. It doesn't feature any offensive material in it. It doesn't glorify anything to do with some of the, I guess I would say, problematic aspects of Song of the South. I just don't understand the argument, and I would forward this. If we're going to remove that, then we have to remove what's right next door, the antebellum mansion facade of Haunted Mansion. I would argue that, well, Liberty Square has to deal with the colonization of the United States, kind of that kind of a colonial period. May have to remove that. I mean, you can make arguments for a lot of things. I worry about the slippery slope. I worry about people being offended on other people's behalf.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think that when it comes to the re-theme of Splash Mountain, like you touched upon, the elements in the attraction right now, as far as we know, there's nothing racially, nothing really racially charged. There's a lot of animals and whatever, right? Singing. I think we have to, if we're going to go to the point where, like, well, just because it's based on a film that's considered racist and we have to completely retheme it, you can go through a lot of stuff in Disneyland and make that same argument. Like, for example, Pirates of the Caribbean, pirates are not known to be great people.
Right.
They did a lot of bad things. So should we completely retheme pirates because, well, there's elements within that pirates culture that was really offensive and really bad? Or can we go in there and just sort of remove the offensive elements like Disney has, like with the selling of the wenches or what have you? You can go in there kind of like surgically and kind of remove these offensive elements without having to completely destroy the theme of the attraction. Even with things like Peter Pan, you have things that are offensive to a lot of people, with the Indians and the represent, how they portrayed Indians back then and things like that. But you can go into those attractions and remove those elements, and Peter Pan is no longer this racial, IP. Yeah. I think you kind of have to approach Splash Mountain like that. Like, what elements in this attraction right now are racial? And if there are racist elements in that attraction, remove those. I just don't think it's necessary to have to retheme the entire attraction,
I would agree. I would very much agree. I like the more surgical approach, and I think that's what Disney has done throughout the years. They have kind of removed elements that were like, okay, well, we don't know how the public might handle this, so we kind of have to move away from that. That was actually one of the big things. One of the things that really stopped Western River Expedition in its tracks back in the 1970s when Mark Davis wanted to. He envisioned this kind of Pirates of the Caribbean 2.0 essentially, and one of the things was how it depicted Native Americans in that attraction. I think I agree, I very much agree with you. If you remove some of the elements that are like, okay, that's kind of on the edge, that's a better. I think you can make much more constructive and better arguments surrounding that than just saying, oh, well, we can't have this at all because it references the animated sequences of a film that's no longer in circulation. Like that's a much harder argument to make. The song is iconic. It won an Academy Award. The gentleman who played Uncle Remus in the Song of the South film, he actually got an honorary Academy Award for his performance in there. I don't see it. I don't get the argument. I don't know where it ends. I don't know where it stops. I think, like you said, you approach it far more surgical, and anything that is, kind of, I guess I would say problematic, you get rid of that way. And I think that's the correct way to go about it.
Yeah. Yeah. And there's been a big push to retheme it to Princess and the Frog. Now, I love Princess and the Frog. I think it's a gorgeous movie. Absolutely beautiful movie. And I would actually, because I love the movie so much, I would actually prefer that movie to get its own thing, like its own attraction from the ground up. Like, I don't want it to just be like the IP used in a retheme. I think Princess and the Frog is a fantastic movie that deserves its own attraction, not just a retheme. If they're going to do a Princess and the Frog attraction, which I think they should do, it should be from the ground up and not just relegated to like just a retheming of an old ride. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. No, I completely agree. And there have been concepts floating around Imagineering for a while, getting Princess Tiana and the rest of the characters from Princess and the Frog in the parks in some way. What is it? Was it the Princess and the Frog Jubilee show on the Mark Twain?
I loved it.
It was extremely popular.
Oh, good.
Extremely successful. It really resonated with the people who saw it there. Some people would actually say it resonated more there than the film itself, but that's a whole other discussion. I have looked at the long-term plans of Walt Disney World. I mean, this is like 50 years down the line. And one thing that's very interesting is Rivers of America is not on there, which is okay. And so what happens to the Liberty Bell out there? Well, it gets essentially permanently docked and turned into a restaurant, a Prince and the Frog restaurant. It turns into Tiana's kind of restaurant dream that she had during the entire film.
Cool.
And that's how it kind of makes its way into the park on that front. That's one of the concepts that I've seen, but I would much prefer a Prince and the Frog ride rather than just a retheme like you said. I think that would be far more beneficial for the character, be far more beneficial to theme park goers. I mean, it's a win-win all around as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I completely agree. Now, switching gears, we're going to go across the Esplanade into California Adventure. Okay. And we're going to talk about Avengers Campus. And I did a video a few days ago in regards to why I'm excited for Avengers Campus. I wanted to ask you. I love hearing your insight. You always bring a lot to the table. I want to ask you, what are your feelings in regards to Avenger Campus and how it might change DCA? You know, how this edition is going to alter DCA, whether it be good, bad, indifferent. But what are your feelings on this addition to the park?
There's been this accusation thrown around that Disney California Adventure is the park that they just throw stuff into when it has no set place at Disneyland. That's right to a certain extent, I think. You know, you gotta, you know, you can make the argument. It's like, does Muppets have anything to do with California? That was 2001 era California Adventure.
Oh yeah.
They've been trying, maybe more successfully than others, to keep the California theme throughout California Adventure. You know, you see Cars Land, it's like, yeah, it takes place in Arizona, but it's Route 66. Car culture is a big thing in California. Okay, it kind of works. It kind of works. And that actually touches off on something later that I want to get into, but we'll stick with this. Little Mermaid, it's like, I mean,
the ocean, and the ocean's by California.
Okay, all right. We can kind of make that work, kind of squeeze that in there. But then I think the one that really kind of got people's attention in a big way was Guardians of the Galaxy. Guardians of the Galaxy is like, okay, now it's like, okay, that has nothing to do with California. And it kind of was its own thing.
Yeah.
With the addition of Avengers Campus, it will integrate that, you know, into that a little bit better.
Yeah.
But you're still dealing with the Avengers, which don't have, I would argue they have more to do with the East Coast than the West. But okay, it's supposed to be like a campus atmosphere, you know, that kind of integrates itself into California.
Yeah.
But that being said, though, I think the Avengers Campus, I don't know if it'll bring in a new wave of things that are not themed, like hardcore specifically themed to California. But I will say it is a departure. That being said, though, I think it will be beneficial for California Adventure to have new draws and new experiences. But if you're a California Adventure purist or a Californian purist for the sake of the theme of California Adventure, I can definitely see why that would rub people the wrong way for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. You know, it really depends, I think, on how the Imagineers approach this, because Marvel exists in our world, you know, like Tony Stark, I think he lived in Malibu.
Yeah.
And, you know, there's a lot of potential there in terms of connecting it to California, because we're fortunate enough to have a property like Marvel that's really rooted in our world. I mean, it's the characters that are sort of the extraordinary aspect. So they could do it if they really wanted to connect it to California. I feel like they could really do it. Will they do it? I don't know. That's another question. But they could definitely tie it to the state if they wanted to. And I hope they do. I hope they really make it a point with the Avengers Campus that, you know what, the Avengers moved out here to California to open up the West Coast campus, you know, for the Avengers for training. You know, they already have a spot on the East Coast. Now they're going to establish themselves on the West Coast. And I think that could really work. You know, even with Black Panther, I think he established his, what was it, like a community center at the end of the film in LA.
Yes,
like that.
yes. You know, you're right.
Stuff like
Didn't
that.
even think about that, yeah.
Yeah, so we can kind of, there's a lot of potential there. It's just, are the Imagineers going to run with that, or are they just going to go, you know, it's Marvel, we're just going to put Marvel in here and not even mention California? That's a whole other story. You know, I hope they do, though. I hope they tie it somehow into the state, even a little bit, you know?
I think they will. I mean, if we look at even Spider-Man, it's supposed to be like an old, like, automotive factory from Tony Stark.
Yeah, yeah.
So, okay, like that has some potential to kind of integrate itself into the kind of the landscape of California, especially being right next to Cars Land. I think there are creative ways to integrate the Avengers into California culture and all that kind of stuff. And I think they are. I think that's why you had Avengers Campus and not some other titles that were floating around there. There is potential. Is it a square peg in a round hole? Yes,
Yeah.
but it can work if they really if they put the effort forward.
Yeah,
I think it can work, and as long as they do, I think people are going to be receptive not just to the Avengers, but a whole plethora of other properties.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And even with you know, they even have a potential there with Marvel, like I drew a blank of Agent Carter. Yes. Carter and the Captain America backstory and all that were rooted very much in
there you go.
30s and 40s. You can, you know, they can, if they really want to go out with the California theme, they can do that with Hollywoodland proper and kind of make it really Agent Carter, Captain America centric, and kind of use that 1940s LA to kind of tell that story. I think that'd be pretty cool. Again, I don't know if they're going to go through all that trouble to do that. I kind of wish they would, though. I think that would be pretty awesome. But there's potential there for sure. So we'll see what what kind of transpires with that. You know,
I think there is potential, and going forward, I think if the Imagineers make that effort to really integrate their whatever properties that they want to put into California Adventure to really have it coalesce or coagulate, I should say, with Disney California Adventure, the California theme. I think that unlocks the potential for a lot of things. So I think it'll be very interesting. That has yet to open, and it's unfortunate, but I think we might be surprised.
Yeah, and one thing before we move on to the next topic, one thing I'm really excited too about this Avengers Campus is the aesthetic, because this is an aesthetic that we haven't really seen yet in California Adventure. It's kind of this weird hybrid of like Tomorrowland and like the Pixar studio in Emeryville.
Yes,
it's this weird thing, and it's going to be a very unique experience in that regard, at least aesthetically, for California Adventure. That it'll set itself apart from the other areas of the park. Which for that, I'm pretty excited.
I am very excited. I think it's a very interesting aesthetic, and it has a lot of potential, and I think it can be integrated, like I said, into California really, really well, but have its own thing. And that sets itself up really nicely for that e-ticket, which I hope is still going to happen.
Yes. And that's another thing you mentioned. Yeah. The e-ticket and even just like the seeds that this land plants for future expansions is
huge.
It's huge. There's so much potential there that, I love Bugs Land. I thought it was really an adorable land. I love Heimlich. That whole area was really cute.
Yeah.
But the Marvel theme is going to present a lot more opportunities for the park, I think, than Bugs Land ever could.
Far more. That goes without saying. Far more.
Yeah. So on to the next topic. Since we had our last video, I think the last time I spoke to you was back in April.
Yep.
That was before Josh D'Amaro became the new president of Parks, Resorts, Consumers Experience, whatever they're calling it now.
Yeah.
But
I don't even remember, actually. I still call it Parks and Resorts, and I got to really get out of that. But yes, by the way, can we take a second? Sure. It's amazing how much has happened in the last couple of months, right?
It's crazy. It's absolutely crazy. Crazy. What are your thoughts? Because now Chapek is now the CEO. Yep. And now D'Amaro is now the head of all the parks and resorts. What are your feelings on that move?
Did a little history on Josh D'Amaro because I actually didn't know that much about him before he actually took even the position at Disneyland Resort, and he was obviously moved to the president of Walt Disney World, and then I still didn't know quite about him, and then now he's in the chair. He's in the seat when it comes to what is it? Parks, Resorts, Experiences, and Products. Something like that. Okay, whatever. We got to get on that. But so he started his career at Disneyland in 1998.
Wow.
Yeah, so he was there during the Presto years and the Cynthia Harris years and all that kind of stuff. And then he, I believe he oversaw the big improvements that were made to Disney's Animal Kingdom, and saw, kind of Avatar coming together and all of that. Then when, he transferred back to be the president of Disneyland Resort, saw like Star Wars Galaxy's Edge come online, and then was moved over right before Mickey and Minnie's Runaway Railway was brought online to Walt Disney World. He has what is really encouraging is that he has seen all of these things develop. He's seen Tomorrowland of 1998 be installed and developed. So he has a first-hand knowledge of maybe the things that went wrong there, and some of the things that were like, ooh, not so good. But has also seen this explosive growth throughout the company, and been on the front lines of guest reaction to a lot of these big-time experiences, these kind of big-time investments. So he understands, I think, the value of doing things at kind of this, more quality-oriented level. He has seen what it does to the resorts and the parks in response to these kind of things. He understands growth and putting money out there and seeing a bigger pot return. He understands all of these things. People really like him. From what I understand, he's a really personable guy, not just with guests who have interacted with him, but from cast, from what I've heard. And I think he's awesome. He did have that one misstep, though. I got to bring this up. Had that one misstep right at the end of Walt Disney World. Remember, they were closing. They were like one of the last to close. Disneyland Resort closed first, and then Walt Disney World. And they kind of had that. Do you remember this? I don't know if you do, but like on the last night they were open, they kind of had people crowd around the Walt Disney World or Magic Kingdom train station, and he kind of got some flack for that.
I do remember that. Yes. I
think kind of a nothing burger, but that's like the only thing that people have ever had a problem with regarding Josh D'Amaro. Other than that, I think he's well versed. He has seen these things. He's been out there. He's been in the trenches of the parks, and I think he's the best guy. Now, doing the kind of elongated view and seeing what has happened over the years, it's going to be interesting, because a lot of, and I've wanted to say this for a long time here, Bob Iger got a lot of flack, or I'm sorry, not Bob Chapek, I should say. Bob Chapek got a lot of flack for being very IP focused. Right? He was very IP driven with a lot of the stuff that he would approve, with a lot of the projects he would approve. I think we saw this with like Maelstrom being rethemed to Frozen and those kind of things, those kind of decisions. And I think it was a lot of undue flack, in my personal opinion. Honestly, the real big push to have things that are more IP driven didn't emanate from Bob Chapek. It was actually from Bob Iger. That was a decision that he made very, very early on. If we look at when Bob Iger took the seat in 2005, 2006, the first real big project that opens up under his leadership is Expedition Everest at Disney's Animal Kingdom. That's the first real big thing the company invested a lot of money and open up with under his watch. And he's looking at this, and do you remember, this was quite a few months ago, but he got some flack for criticizing Expedition Everest? Yeah, on that Barron's interview. Right. Yeah. It's no, it's no coincidence that he uses that example in criticizing maybe his predecessor and having these big time, they spent like $100 million on Expedition Everest, right, having these big time investments not be IP themed. When going back to when Expedition Everest opened, he's just like, how big could this have been had it been themed to an IP? Right. What could this have done more than Expedition Everest did to revitalize not just that area of Animal Kingdom, but the entire park in itself? They did a lot, but he always thought we should be far more synergistic with the properties that we have in our parks, because, as he said before, if the competition had this IP, they'd be doing the exact same thing.
Exactly.
And I think that's very true. How this relates to Josh Giamaro is he a guy that's going to put that focus on IP, like his predecessors have, or is he gonna try to maybe skirt that line there? I think we're gonna see a lot more IP driven attractions.
Yeah.
But I can at least say this: it will at least be done with quality. It sounds like Josh Giamaro knows the difference between, quality experiences and maybe 1998 Tomorrowland.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And one thing I'm really curious about, and it's kind of the waters are kind of muddy right now because we have Chapek as the CEO, but then Iger is sort of kind of asserting control too, though. So we have like these almost like this dual CEO position almost. But
yeah,
it's interesting though how Chapek, technically under Chapek, because he's the CEO, that this promotion happened. Because a lot of fans criticized Chapek not really caring, and he promoted Josh D'Amaro, which is a fan favorite, who a lot of fans will agree, really gets it. I don't know. I mean, it's like, if this is Chapek's decision, I think that fans should sort of kind of at least give the guy some credit, because
I think so.
Yeah, because here's the thing too. A lot of fans have this thing where, like, when you like an executive, right?
Yeah.
They have everything to do with the good stuff, but when the bad stuff comes, they had nothing to do with it. For some reason, that was under the radar, and vice versa. If they don't like somebody, they're completely in control when it's bad, but but they had nothing to do with it when it's good. And I think we sort of have to look at things now. We're like, okay, well, Chapek's the CEO. Technically, I would assume he had to sign off on this promotion for D'Amaro. I've been critical of Chapek in the past, but you know what? I got to give the guy credit. If this was his call, it's a good first step,
I think you can really make that argument. It's very interesting that you bring that up. I think you can really make that argument that, hey, Bob Chapek may have put the right guy in charge. And the meteoric rise of Josh D'Amaro is very interesting. But I think, okay, this is a guy that gets it. Chapek is smart enough to understand that and promote the right person for the job. When you remember when Bob Chapek was placed in the role of being at the head of Parks and Resorts, coming from consumer products, he was chosen for a very specific purpose. And the specific purpose was to more integrate consumer products and Parks and Resorts. That's why it's one division now. That's why there's a new name for it, and we can't, for the life of us, remember how that name goes. But that's why. The idea was, okay, if we're going to have these very immersive lands, these very IP-driven experiences, but ones that guests can get immersed in, not just the attractions themselves, but the lands and experiences that kind of sort of happen that coincide with this. Well, then we have to really establish that synergy and that relationship, and to a much higher degree than we've ever done before. We saw with the opening of Star Wars Galaxy's Edge hundreds of products to go online with the opening of that land. Hundreds of products developed, produced, packaged, and actually be installed in various quadrants throughout the land in a way that we've never seen before. That relationship wouldn't have been possible without the fusion of those two divisions working hand in hand, working side by side through the development of Star Wars Galaxy's Edge. It's very interesting to see D'Amaro that doesn't really have that kind of experience of consumer products be thrust in this role. It's a very, very interesting pick. We're going to have somebody that's more resort driven or parks driven than consumer products driven. You got to give Bob Chapek credit in that.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. I mean, we as fans, we have to call it as we see it, and a lot of times I think people kind of get into the whole sides thing, and anything that Chapek does is bad, and anything that this guy does is good, or anything that person does is, and a lot of it even for like things back in the day, like you mentioned Tomorrowland '98, right? Which was, I think most fans agree, was a total disaster.
Not good.
Not good. Not good. It's funny because, like, for that, fans will be like, well, Tony Baxter had nothing to do with it. But then for Indiana Jones, which was a
Right.
phenomenal hit, he had
Yeah.
everything to do with that. Well, look, the guy was in charge for both.
It's
So,
true.
it's like
That's fair. That's fair. Now to defend Tony Baxter, just for a second. Now that you bring that up, you really are limited to the amount of budget that you get, and that's why I say that's why the person in charge of doling that money out is so important, right?
Sure.
If you have a guy like Paul Pressler maybe doling out the money, that's going to be very different than
that's true.
maybe like a Tom Staggs doling out the money, right? So you could be in charge of projects, and I think Tony Baxter did as best as he could with just, man. I mean, and look at California Adventure. California Adventure was also part under the leadership of Tony Baxter, and you do as well as possible when you're in that creative capacity. You really are limited to what the executives give you, and how much rope they have out there for you. I think you're very much right. I think you do have to level some criticism at some people where it's justified. And I think Tony Baxter, I don't think he would say that Tomorrowland 1998 or California Adventure, his role in it, was the top of his game. It's at the first thing that you see in his portfolio, right?
Yeah.
At the same time, though, these are positions that are managed and that are overseen by a slew of people. And I think with Bob Chapek setting Josh D'Amaro, setting that tone early on, like, hey, look, we're going to have somebody that's parks driven, but this kind of person who gets it when it comes to the guest experience, the guest satisfaction, all that. I think it's like, okay, you got to give him, like you said, you got to give him some credit there.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll see what happens. It's going to be very, very interesting to see Chapek's the direction he takes as a company, and I'm especially interested in it. After Iger leaves, because right now Iger's still there, so we're still going to. He's still influenced, at least I would say, quite a bit from Iger being right there. But once Iger leaves, and then we go on and on and on, I think that's really going to be the true Chapek. It's going to be very interesting to see how he manages the company.
Training wheels are off.
Yes.
Now you got to make your own decisions, and I think it's going to be very, very interesting. What a horrible time, by the way, to get that job. I mean, it's just
poor guy.
Like, man, I barely set foot in the door and the friggin' building's on fire. I mean, it's very unfortunate. I'm glad that Bob Iger kind of stuck around just to kind of say, hey, this shouldn't reflect on you. This is just unprecedented times that we're going through right here. Let's sort it out together. I think that was a good thing on his part.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. And Iger is a very calculating, careful executive, and
very image conscious. Yeah,
exactly. So he's going to really make sure that the ship is kind of going in the right direction before he leaves, which I appreciate. I'm glad that he's doing that.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. And he didn't abandon ship. He's like, hey, look, maybe this was the wrong time to step out, but I'm not going to see it fail. And of course, he's, I guess you could be a pessimist and say, oh well, he's got financial incentive to do so. Yeah, that's true, but I think he is kind of worried about his legacy, where he leaves the company. He always wanted to leave the company in a better position than when he first got it, right? Yeah. I mean, and we can all remember those days. And I think he really has, and we just got to get over this hump, and I think we're going to see that July 17th.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Now, before we go, I wanted to leave this opportunity for you to kind of bring up any topic that you want to talk about before we head out.
Yeah.
Anything on your mind that you want to discuss?
I think the big topic right now is I've wanted to say this for a little while. The shaming that goes on with people at the parks or attending the parks or whatever. Please allow for some patience for not only the parks to get their house in order, but for people who want to experience the magic.
Right.
Don't shame people for going. They're doing a lot of steps. I've been keeping up with some of the openings that have been happening over in Orlando right now with Universal and SeaWorld. And SeaWorld has had some problems, but Universal, like, they've set the tone, they've set the bar. They're doing everything that they can to keep as many people safe as possible. It's incumbent on the person who's actually attending those parks to take their safety into their own hands, of course.
Right.
But they're doing everything that they can. They're setting up markers. They're doing the hand sanitizer. They're actually dispensing hand sanitizer for people who right before they get on the ride, which is very, very interesting.
Wow.
SeaWorld is actually wiping down the ride vehicles when they come back into station before each guest load, which is, that's a big step. I would say please refrain from shaming people from seeing these things. These things have to be supported. A lot of cast members' livelihoods are on the line here.
Right.
I think people, I have trust in the American public that they can kind of handle this thing. And, we saw it, some people were like, oh, well, look at the opening of Shanghai. They're so orderly. They're so, they listen to direction and stuff like that. And it's like, they're not, the Shanghai guest is not really known for civil obedience, I should say. And, I think I have trust in the American public that they can kind of go out there and they can be safe and have safe practices. I know the masks thing is a big deal right now. Listen, if that's what it takes to get back in, I think people will understand and will acquiesce to that. And I think it'll be real good. Actually, what's going on right now? Did you hear that report about the kind of consumer? What is it? The practices of maybe a resort destination like Walt Disney World versus a very locally driven park, Disneyland and Universal Studios Hollywood. Have you seen the contrast between those?
No, I didn't.
So they were estimating that, and this is something I kind of theorized even before it happening, but they've come to the same conclusion, that Disneyland, because it's so locally driven, I believe 75% of its attendance on an annual basis is due to the locals within, I think they say within 250 miles. Because it's such a locally driven theme park, that it has a far better chance of being successful at the gate and than maybe Walt Disney World that is a destination resort. So because it's, you have to book a flight or something like that, it's a lot different of kind of a value set than people who are just like, hey, you know what? This is my hangout spot. This is where I'm going to go anyway. Let's just go down there and let's just be safe. I think you might see a far more successful relaunch than Walt Disney World. And as Josh Imaro said, they were the first ones to close, last to open. I think that's for a reason.
Yeah, no, you know what? That's a great point. That's a fantastic point. And I think that it's right on the money because with Walt Disney World, there's so much pre-planning involved. It's months, a lot of times months or even a year or two in advance of going on your actual trip. At Disneyland Resort, a lot of it is locals. A lot of it is annual pass holders. And really, if Disneyland were to open tomorrow, if they were to have just tweet, hey, we're open now, the gates would be packed because we have all these locals on standby ready to go.
And that's where a reservation system really comes in handy because it's like, there is a pent-up demand. There is a pent-up demand to get back into these places. It might not be initially felt or in Orlando. I know some of the attendance numbers from Universal were not good over there. But wait until Walt Disney World opens. Wait until Disneyland opens. I mean, you're going to have no problem filling that place up at all. And interestingly enough, we saw that the Grand Californian and the Paradise Pier Hotel were opening back up, but not Disneyland Hotel.
Yes.
Which kind of like, okay, maybe you can save the saturation of the Anaheim market with hotels already. Maybe it's too big of a facility. Might not be economically feasible. I think that's what I said on Twitter. But the site for bookings for the hotels that are confirmed to be opening, it crashed.
Oh wow!
And so there is some demand even from even to book these rooms, which is very, very interesting. People want to slice the magic, and they want it as fast as possible.
Yeah, and you know what? I'm gonna be real candid right now.
Mm-hmm.
I I actually made reservations for a hotel in September. I've
you
already done it.
Oh, there you go. There you go. What hotel are you staying at?
I like, and it's a little more expensive, but I actually like the Grand Cali. And the reason why I like the Grand Cali, not because it's fancier or anything like that. Mm-hmm. I'm actually, on a personal note, I'm very claustrophobic, and I don't like elevators. And the Grand Cali, the first like 3 or 4 floors have that giant, beautiful stairway.
Oh, it's gorgeous. That resort hotel is gorgeous.
It's gorgeous, and I just prefer that instead of these long, big towers where you have to take an elevator to the 14th floor. For me personally, I just prefer the lower kind of layout of the Grand Cali, and I'll pay a little more for that comfort. So that's kind of that's where I'm going.
It has always been a dream of mine to stay there and just to be able to walk out into a theme park. I mean, that blows my mind, and to be right there. Well, congratulations, sir. That is really awesome. That's great.
Yeah, it's a fun hotel. The one that I haven't stayed at though, and I don't know if you've stayed there, is the Paradise Pier Hotel. Have you stayed at that one yet?
Nobody stayed at the Paradise Pier Hotel. No, nobody stayed. It wasn't even built by Disney. It was
no, they bought it.
Japanese corporation that they bought it from, and we're still all wondering, is that in the long-term future for Disneyland, for the Disneyland Resort property? I just want to know, is it still going to be there? I've seen some videos of it. It's about what you'd expect. It's a little bit maybe not as well maintained as Grand California and Disneyland Hotel. Both of them have been refurbished heavily. And then also, too, the Disneyland Hotel is going to get a DVC tower, so that's going on.
Yes. Mm-hmm. Well, I think it's very telling. And we can actually dive into this maybe a little more on the next collabo. But I think it's very telling how they haven't made a push yet to officially call it the Pixar Pier Hotel. It almost feels like they kind of know it's on borrowed time anyway, so why bother?
Yep. We can get into that next time, but I think you're right.
Well, thank you, Dre. I appreciate you as always, my friend, coming on. Thank you so much for thank you all so much for watching. Dre, before we go though, let everybody know where they can find you on social media.
You can find me on social media. I'm at a lot of places, but I frequent one particular social media site. It's just at VashSky, VashSky.
Perfect. Well, thank you, Dre, so much, and to all of you, thank you so much for watching, and have a wonderful day.